All right, guys. So, welcome to today. Today is our last personally attacked, Christina. All right. Now that YouTube has heard your cry for Boost Camp to end. All right. So, we are going to go over some more relevant things to the third quarter. So, it's going to be a little bit more familiar to you guys. We're going to streamline through Article of Confederation and Declaration of Independence in reverse order. Declaration first, then obviously Articles. And then the big thing that we're going to talk about today is the three branches. Okay. I almost guarantee Heise and I can both guarantee you, you're probably going to start around 45 to 50 questions on Friday. And to say that probably about maybe 10, probably a fourth test will be somehow related to the three branches, okay, in some form or fashion. So we are going to get started. And yes, Julian. Okay, so okay. Yeah, I did send it to Shadrick and Will. So let us let you guys 6, 7, 8, 9, because to be quite honest with you guys, creating the Constitution, we can really, it's the step between Articles of Confederation, and it's really kind of like an amalgamation, to use a SAT word, of all of the other topics. Okay, it's a combination of all, because we know that the article, we know that we need to fix it. Okay, but how are we going to do that? And that can really be answered quite simply. Yes, you do not have it. It was earlier today.
I got the what's it called?
114. You got an hour ago? I mean, it could be very much that like the internet is lagging today because of.
Let's destroy the internet. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, when I was sucks.
Lucas, coming at you again.
Vacuum cleaner.
All right, so let us look at the Declaration of Independence first, and there are some very key words in here. And let me move this so that way you guys don't see it. All right, so 1.4 is going to be our standard here. And there's a few important things that we have to talk about when we look at this. So life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right. Going back to we talked about three natural rights. Christina, go.
I'm thinking
life, liberty, and property. And so we're going to be talking about how those relate and even to the the thing with All right, sorry guys, I got disconnected here, but Shays Rebellion. Okay, so going into Articles of Confederation and Shays Rebellion. Now, to go into this and talk about the Articles of Confederation, we're going to talk about the weaknesses in a second. But Shays Rebellion is very specific in the fact of it's often referred to as the straw that broke the camel's back. What I mean by that is there are a lot of other issues, but this was seen as kind of that one thing that like everyone looked at and they were like, man, the articles are flawed. Let's change them. Okay. So the Shays Rebellion, just to kind of read this really synopsis in your notes, you can just put either a summary of this or you can pick and choose what you put as long as you remember the instance of Shays Rebellion and why it was important. So a violent insurrection. How is that insurrection word? When else was that used recently? Insurrection. Any remember in January, was there an insurrection?
Oh yeah, the overthrow of the Capitol.
Okay. So a lot of people referred to, okay, a lot of people referred to the January 6th riots as an insurrection. Okay. So to kind of give you the idea of what is happening, it is essentially glorified riots, right? In the Massachusetts countryside during 1786 and 1787, Shays Rebellion brought about monetary debt crisis at the end of the American Revolutionary War. Shays Rebellion accelerated calls to reform the Articles, eventually resulting in the Philadelphia Convention in 1787. The convention elected Washington as its president and ultimately produced the Constitution of the United States. So, in this insurrection, in this riot, it was kind of a vicious circle because you had Daniel Shays and fellow Revolutionary War veterans that should have been paid by the government, but they couldn't because the government didn't have the ability to tax, so they couldn't pay them. Those Revolutionary War veterans owed people money. When they couldn't pay, they were throwing them in jail. Okay, so it's kind of a vicious circle of, hey, you should have done this, you couldn't, but guess what, you needed to, otherwise we're going to throw you in jail. So it's kind of a messed up situation. And the whole idea, this cry for Daniel Shay and his men becomes very loud. And essentially they go to the Philadelphia Convention. They're like, hey, we need to fix the Articles. But the more and more that the founders look at the Articles, they say, it's kind of like, it's okay, but it can't just be fixed. We need to just scrap it, okay? And the reasons why we need to scrap it are because of these weaknesses. Yes. Yes, go ahead. Now, once again, you do not need to write all of these down, but these are the weaknesses that are listed, okay, in the test specs that you should know about or need to know about. So the first and probably the most important, and I can almost guarantee you when you see a question about the Articles of Confederation, the question is going to be somewhat related to Congress's ability to tax. And they couldn't tax. So if you can't tax, what doesn't the government have?
Money.
Money. If you don't have money, what can't you do?
Anything.
Literally anything. Yeah. So the whole notion that we are very, very lucky that let's just say, yes, you could walk, but let's just say England and the king are very spurned after the war, and they're just like, hey, I know we signed this, treaty, but I'm going to go ahead and attack them, I don't know, next year. If they did that, we would not have a military, okay? Because under the Articles of Confederation, there's no way that we could pay a military. We had a very small one, okay? But we relied on independent, basically militias for each state to kind of protect the individual states. Congress had no power to regulate trade. So you could have Georgia trading with England. You could have Massachusetts trading with Germany, okay? And the government doesn't have a say in any of that. Now, you might be thinking, why is that a problem? In a grand scheme of things, it's not a huge problem, but the problem that lies in it is, hey, you might have Georgia making millions of dollars off of their crops. Meanwhile, a northern state couldn't really compete with that because they can't grow crops year round. So the trade should be regulated some way, somehow, by a central government. And that's kind of what we have today. Congress had no power to enforce its laws. So guess what? They could make a law and they could say, hey, can't be out after the dark. Can't leave the house after dark. Curfew. But there's no bark to the bite. Or sorry, there's no bite to the bark. Meaning they could threaten it. They could say, hey, this is the law, but there's no way that they could punish. Okay? And there's no way they can punish because there is no judicial branch.
No money in the USA. I mean, money.
Speaking of that, is the national government lacked a national court system. So we had no judicial branch. And they also lacked a central leadership or an executive branch. So the only branch, like we said before, that was even involved in the Articles of Confederation was the legislative branch. Okay, they had a Congress, and people even say technically Congress had a leader, John Hanson. So people will say, well, John Hanson was technically the first leader of the country after the Revolutionary War. Yes and no. He wasn't the first president. That's why when you look and see, like obviously we became a free nation in 1776. Okay. However, until 1787, okay, we have the Articles for about 10, 11 years. And then we have the Constitution. So although we're free in 1776, President Washington isn't the president until 1787. Okay. Any questions about Articles of Confederation? Because I will spend about 30 minutes, so we're right on time here. 30 minutes on the three branches. What's up? 30 minutes. All right. Yes, go ahead. All right. So quick question, and this is a very similar question to something that you might see. How did the U.S. Constitution solve the problem created by the Articles of Confederation? So they're very vague in this. But A, it avoided issue of states' rights. B, it allowed the states to elect representatives. C, it prevented the amendment of federal laws. Or D, it enabled the federal government to collect taxes. 30 seconds. Remember to write the correct letter and a sentence as to why you believe that is correct. What's up? Yes, please.
So I have a question. Okay, so let's say you have nothing. Let's say you have nothing. What can you do that is fun without money? You have no friends. You have.
That's a conversation for 4:15 or 5:15. All right. The correct answer, Rachel, is. Raise your hand if you disagree with her or agree with her. Raise your hand if you agree with her. Raise your hand if you disagree with her. Wait, what? All right. Now, I will say it is not C. The answer is actually D. Now, it prevented amendments to the federal law. Now, I'm actually glad that you picked this one because, remember, in order to make a law, what did you need for the for the Articles of Confederation? You needed a large majority. Now, you didn't need all, but if you wanted to amend, okay, in order to amend, you actually needed all 13 states to agree. So now, remember, we do have an amendment process, which needs 2/3 of states, or sorry, 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of states. However, it is not every single one of them because there's always going to be that one state that doesn't agree with it or that one group of people that don't agree with it. So you're never going to get all the states to agree. Okay, very rarely do you get all representatives to agree on a certain thing. Okay, so in this case, it is enabled the federal government to collect taxes because that is the first and foremost thing that the Articles of Confederation did not give the availability to do. All right. And then we have our last topic, which is 8 and 9. Okay, so creating the Constitution and the three branches of government. So, perfect. All right. So now creating the Constitution. Remember, we talked about the Philadelphia Convention. Washington is the leader or presiding over the convention. And like we said before, they were trying to fix it, but then when they noticed the moment they started trying to fix, quote unquote, all of these things, it just became a, hey, we're going to scrap it and start over. Okay. And that's how we got the Constitution. So looking at the Constitution, and this is going to look very familiar because this is the gist of what you need to know for the three branches of government. Okay. Yes. Now, I think you guys have seen this chart maybe 20 times by now, okay? Between state government and federal government. So, really quickly going through this with you guys. The legislative. What article of the Constitution does that come from? What power? First, number 1, okay? What about the executive branch? 2, and then judicial is 3, okay? Now, they are in order. And actually, for the state of Florida, does anyone remember the article numbers for them?
8, 9, and 10. 3, 4, and 5.
3, 4, and 5. Okay. So the judicial branch is 3, executive is 4, and then judicial is 5. So it would be a lot easier if it was 4, 5, 6, just because it would be in order. But
You said
sorry, legislative, executive, judicial. All right. Now, the purpose of them. Okay. So, legislative, they make the laws. Executive enforces, and judicial interprets the laws. Okay? Yes. Carries out and enforces would be the same. Okay? So you have making law now. We're not going to go into the lawmaking process, but just make sure you remember from an idea to the president signing it. Make sure you remember the steps from a bill to law as well. There will be at least one question on that as well. Yes.
how could we forget the I'm just a bill?
If you forget that I'm just a bill, I will put the I'm just a bill song on repeat on your iPod Nano for you to always listen to. Yes. I did. So embarrassing civics teacher like fact. I was actually at the beach with my wife, and it was on my phone, like on my playlist, and we were just listening to good music, and all of a sudden that came on. And it wasn't like, an empty day at the beach. Everyone just kind of looked over, and there was this one man that just started singing it along, and I was like, this guy gets it. This guy gets it. All right. So,
I would walk up there.
all right. So, really quickly, who's in each branch? I did put a term here, and that's not necessarily bicameral, isn't like who's in the branch. But remember, bicameral means 2 houses.
2 houses.
Okay, so we have 2 houses of Congress. We have the House of Representatives, which is seen as the lower house, and we have the Senate, which is seen as the higher house. Now, we call it the lower house because it's more representative. There are more members. There are 435 members that are there. Okay, and you can actually tell how many members that you have. It goes by the census. It goes by population. So states like Florida, Texas, California, and New York have way more representatives than members of like Wyoming, Idaho, okay, Rhode Island. Yes. Who's in the executive branch? That's going to be the president, vice president, cabinet. Now, remember, what is the job of the cabinet? To what? To back up the president, to give advice to the president. Okay. Now, the vice president actually has a special job. He or she also advises the president. They break the tie where? No. And Senate. Okay. So actually, okay. So whereas in the House of Representatives, you will never have a tie. Okay, because there's an odd number. So 435 members. In the Senate, there is the possibility of a tie because every state gets 2 representatives. There are 50 states, 100 members. Okay, so the vice president is actually the tie-breaking vote in the Senate and seen as the leader of the Senate. Yes.
No, they're gonna have a crack.
So,
Like 15.
so,
But then that means that they're being even about
so, so the number of the House of Representatives will not change. Okay, so there's going to be a max of 435. What will happen is states will gain or lose members. So we in the state of Florida have 27. After the census that just happened in 2020, there's a high possibility that we gain 1, if not 2 members. Okay, so we could go up to 29 potentially members of the House of Representatives.
Who will
Uh,
lose their-
Who what? Who would lose? So states with that they either see their population decrease or stay somewhat the same. More than likely, it's going to be the states. If we are gaining people, that means that more than likely some states are losing population. It's
What about people who live in the north and the south?
north and the so you have to claim residence at one place. So you can't be like both. Now, in the judicial branch, we have the Supreme Court justices. Now, I did put U.S. and Florida just because this was a question that a few of you got wrong when we looked at it in USA Test Prep. So there are always going to be an odd number, just like we said for House of Representatives. There's going to be no ties. So there has to be an odd number. In the U.S. Supreme Court, we have 9. In the Florida Supreme Court, we have 7. Okay, and who appoints them?
You know those people that
The president. Okay, the president says, "Hey, there's a vacancy on the seat. I want Gerald. I want Gerald Monkey to be the next Supreme Court justice." Okay. Now, requirements. Pay close attention. I did put these like 2 sets of numbers. Remember, the left number is going to be House of Representatives. The right number is going to be the Senate. So in order to be a member of the House of Representatives, it is 25 years old. It is 7 years a citizen, and then you must live where you represent. Compare that to the Senate, in which you have to be 30 years old, 9 years a citizen, and then live where you represent. Okay, so with that said, because remember, we said one is the lower house, one is the higher house. The Senate is seen as more esteemed, okay, more formal in the fact of like there's only 100 members in the entire country. Okay, so you have over 100+ million people in this country. You are going to have 100 that represent the entire country in one building. So they are very esteemed. Yes.
Okay, may I just say, so what if I came out of the womb splat?
Thank you.
Yes, with great moral character, could speak, knew a ton about law.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. All right. So, executive branch. Now, this is specific for the president. There are no constitutional requirements to be a vice president or cabinet, but I will tell you why these should apply. Okay? Because to be a president, you have to be 35 years or older, a resident, meaning you have to live in the United States 14 years prior to running, and then finally, a natural born citizen. So notice the difference between House of Representatives and Senate, where you have to be a citizen for 7 or 9 years. Here, you have to be a natural born citizen. Okay, so you must be either born here or you must have a parent, okay, remember going back to law of blood, that was a citizen and you were born in another country, but you have that ability to be a natural born. Now, the reason why I say these requirements are not constitutionally stated for vice president and cabinet is because it doesn't say that anywhere. But if the president is assassinated or president dies in office, who takes over? Okay, vice president. So it's good to have that person have those requirements because If they don't, that means that they can't take over the office. If they're 32, okay, president dies, then it skips the vice president and goes straight to Speaker of the House. Okay, yes. Now, remember, the president picks you. So it's probably someone that they can trust, and they're not thinking, hey, they're going to assassinate me to then become president. Okay. Now, remember the whole notion of impeachment as well, with you going to jail for conspiracy to murder the president of the United States. Yes. Okay. Moving on. I have no idea. I would assume that's animal cruelty. All right. Now, to go to Kenny's question, the only requirement constitutionally for the federal government, okay, so this is the U.S. Supreme Court, is good moral character. Okay. Now, there are a few requirements at the state level, okay, including you have to be a member of the Florida State Bar, you have to be in good standing, but there still is no age requirement. In this case, there is no requirement for age, there's no requirement for education, there's no requirement even to knowing the law. Okay? So you could be literally a newborn, as Kenny was saying. Now, remember, okay, the president could appoint somebody. Now, if you're a 4-year-old, and remember, you are confirmed by the House and Senate, or the Senate, are they going to confirm a 4-year-old to be a justice? I hope not. Okay, I have a little bit more faith.
Say all of it happens and a new person is appointed. Imagine just having your case be turned by a 4-year-old.
That would be the saddest, most exciting moment of being a civics teacher ever. All right. So there are a few things here that we need to go over with powers. Now, powers for legislative, they approve presidential appointments. So kind of what we just talked about with the notion of justices. But it's not just justices. It could be ambassadors to other countries. It could be other positions. So cabinet members are technically have to be approved on by the Senate for them to be the Secretary of Education or whatever they are. Yes, Christina. Mm-hmm.
TikTok is practically saying how that thingy also matches the same thing as a serial killer's last word.
All right. Anyway, I'll try to go to sleep tonight and not think about that.
Yes.
The next one, print and coin money. The reason why I put coin money is just because sometimes you'll see it as that when you coin money, that just means that you're printing money. Okay, so to print or coin money, that is the responsibility of Congress. Congress will say, hey, Federal Reserve, we are going to, and the mint, we are going to print X amount of $100 bills, X amount of 20s, 50s, 10s, 1s, okay? No, they can't. They can't just say, I want to print $1 million and put it in my account.
Can I say the next one in my own words?
The next one, Kenny, is?
Okay. Say, hey, I'm gonna pew you with you.
All right. Declare war. Thank you, Kenny. I appreciate you. All right. Declare war. And then the next one, I'm going to hold off on explaining a little bit, but implied and enumerated power, because that's actually going to be something else that we're going to look at in the next slide. So enumerated just means it's written. Implied means it's understood. Okay, very simple way of saying it. Okay, 7 hats of the president. Now, remember, the 7 hats of the president are the 7 things that the president has to do or has the responsibility of doing. So, chief of state, chief executive, chief diplomat, chief legislature, commander-in-chief, chief economist, and then chief of the party. Okay?
Chief male or female? Wait.
Yes.
and the thing with the king, and then they said that they just want to have.
So the chief executive is just leader of the executive branch,
I have the executive.
the one that's in charge of enforcing the laws. All right.
Try to find an alternative.
Yes. All right. And the very last one, so we have the judicial branch. The judicial branch, their power, while is the least word-wise, personally could potentially be the most overpowered. Okay? Their power is judicial review. Meaning what? What is judicial review?
They review something about judicial stuff.
Oh, they declare things constitutional and unconstitutional.
Thank you, Julian. All right, so they basically say, now, is it just limited to courts? No. Okay. So if the president decides, hey, I'm going to make an executive order that I can make laws whenever I want, and not just executive orders, I can just make all the laws I want without Congress's approval. Do you think that would stand? No. Okay. The judicial branch would say, hey, that's unconstitutional. That's an act of the president, and that's unconstitutional. Okay. That would be tyrannical.
Why can't I use water?
All right. Now, the last thing.
He wants it when you're running out. I mean, when you make him pee.
Yes. All right. So, enumerated and implied. So, just, I know I kind of gave you like the Cliff Notes version just before. Okay. But enumerated, another way that you might see enumerated power is expressed or delegated. Expressed means that you see it. It's right there in front of you. It's expressed. Okay. So if it's written in the Constitution, it's expressed. It's enumerated. It's written down. So it's giving them the power because it's written directly there. So the reason why Congress can punish pirates is because right there in Article 1, okay, it says that Congress has the power to punish pirates. Okay. Now, are we doing that in 2021? Not necessarily. Okay. They're just. I was going to answer dad joke, but it's too late for that. All right. Implied.
Answer that.
All right. Implied power. Okay. Implied. Two other ways that you might see this: the necessary and proper, and that really defines what it is. Okay. If something is necessary and proper, that means that it may not be there. Okay. It's not written down, but it's necessary. Then we should make laws for it. So the Constitution mentions nothing about airplanes. Probably because Thomas Jefferson would have thought like the devil created it if he saw a big piece of metal flying in the air in 1787. Okay. Yes, right. So there's nothing that says anything about. Does that mean that Congress can't make laws on air travel? Okay. No, they can because it's necessary and proper. Okay. And that's what the elastic clause is. Okay. It allows the Constitution and the government to expand and retract when needed. Okay, so it gives them some leeway in making those rules, those laws for us. All right, everyone's favorite thing, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is when we did this during the year, checks and balances were kind of like the big, you guys like kind of like vampire and garlic. You guys didn't want it. You ran away from it. So I want to make sure you guys have some examples and understands, and they're a little bit smaller, but I'll explain each one. So checks and balances for each one. So the legislative to executive. So think about it like this: Congress to the president. So Congress must approve all presidential appointments. And guess what? Congress also has this big deal with impeachment. Okay. Now, impeachment doesn't necessarily mean just the president. It can be anyone in the balance between the branches. Okay, so They're checking them to make sure they don't have too much power. The legislative branch to the judicial branch. Congress and the Senate specifically must approve all presidential appointments. So if you're the president and you say, hey, I want Gerald Monkey to be the next Supreme Court justice, they are going to be approved, or they must be approved before they become a justice. And that can be also any other appointments as well. So like we said before, ambassadors, cabinet members, okay, so they kind of have that power over all of the presidential appointments, but specifically for judicial branch, they're going to be the ones approving them. Executive branch, so these are the presidents. President to the legislative branch. The very first one, and probably the easiest one to remember, is veto. Okay, so Congress tries to make a law. The president doesn't agree. They can veto. Okay, when we veto a law, that's essentially means what?
No.
Okay, yes, essentially means no. It's a reset button. Okay, now talking about another check and balance, can the legislative branch do anything about a veto? What can they do, Rhiannon? Override it. What percentage or what fraction do they need to override?
2/3.
Yes.
Yes.
Right? 2/3 of Congress, if they vote, they can override the president. Okay, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And then executive branch to judicial branch, kind of going along the same vein that we said earlier. The president appoints all justices on the Supreme Court, but also all judges in general. All federal judges are appointed by the president. Now, does the president know all 100 plus judges that he's appointing? Probably not, but his advisors, his cabinet members, are coming to him with suggestions, and they are going to nominate them through that. Yes.
Okay, so you know how we have Cheetos? President has vetoes.
Okay. So, sorry. All right. Judicial branch. So, just when you thought judicial review was going to end, all of the checks and balances that the judicial branch has is going to deal with this one word: unconstitutional. Okay. So, essentially, to the legislative branch, they can declare laws or bills unconstitutional, and then they can declare the president's actions, whether it's an actual physical action or if it's an executive order, they can declare that unconstitutional as well.
Very important.
Yes.
Marco.
Hello.
Just no.
I like.
Do not. We've got 7 minutes to keep it together. Do not rickroll. All right. Now, we do have one last question we're going to look at. One last boost camp question. All right. So, the newspaper headline describes an event in U.S. history. August 4th, 2006, Cybercrime Treaty approved. Which part of the national government participated in the process described in the newspaper headline? A, Senate and President. B, Supreme Court and President. C, House of Representatives and Senate. Or D, Supreme Court and House of Representatives. 30 seconds. Write it down in your answer, okay? And then give me one sentence as to why. So just don't put your hands up. Just why.
August 4th, I hate August 4th because it's August 4th.
So rude.
Kenneth. There.
I hate sheep also. Sheep suck. Say August 4th.
It's Rhiannon's birthday.
All right, because it is Rhiannon's birthday on August 4th, even though she was not born in 2006,
She was.
making Mr. Heise and I feel real old. What is the correct answer, Rhiannon?
Yeah, Rhiannon. Yeah, Rhiannon.
So if a treaty is approved, who has to be part of that process? Okay, so we know the legislative branch has part of that. Who else is part of that? Okay, so we have the president. Now we have to know specifically what's part of the legislative branch and the president. So it is the only option that has the legislative branch and the executive is A, and it is true. The Senate, okay, the Senate is the one, the higher house that must be, that must make that decision. Okay, now, are there any questions? I know we kind of like flew through everything, but I think YouTube might demonetize me if we do that. Not like we're making any money on our YouTube channel, but
What if I can play it?
all right, that's where all of these videos are going. Yes. All right.
Mr. Heisen must charge.
Any
No, I
probably does actually from last year. All right.
I doubt it.
So
Subscribe to Mr. Dunn.
with that said, those of you guys online, GP and Otto, thanks for joining us. You guys can log out. Yeah. Those say hi to GP. Hi GP. Those of you that borrowed a computer, if you borrowed a Miranda computer, please put them over there. The computers must be plugged in. Must be plugged in.